Good morning, readers. This morning is, it's 1 week after Valentine's Day, so today's the 21st, and it is launch day for the Telepathy of Gardens, which is number 5 in the Reg Rawlins series. Paranormal mystery, a cozy, and as I usually do on launch day, I'd like to give you a short reading from that book. Usually I read from chapter 1, maybe chapter 2 if chapter 1 is really short. Today I'm going to mix that up and I'm going to read to you from chapter 3, which is a chapter that I quite enjoyed writing and reading. So, Reg was tired when she got back indoors. It had taken a lot of energy to fight the temptation to join Corbin. Even though he hadn't been magicking her the same way as he had in the past, he'd still been doing something. Maybe he was trying out a new power, a way of influencing her with different methods from those he'd used before. Who knew what powers he'd acquired from the artifacts in the warehouse and the witch doctor? Starlight meowed at Reg, scolding her for going away for so long. Or maybe he could smell Corbin's scent on her, or sense that she'd been talking to him. She hadn't actually been outside for that long. She stooped down and picked him up. I know, Star. I didn't know he was coming over, and I didn't let him ensorcel me, so everything is fine. He purred and rubbed the velvety top of his head against her chin. He reminded her that he was her cat, not Nicole, and not the 9 catechins. He was the one who had chosen her, and she was marked as his territory. She was his human. You're a silly cat, you know, Reg said. You think that you're the owner and I'm your pet when it's the other way around. His disdainful gaze clearly communicated that she had it backward. Reg was awake early the next morning, despite having been out for a midnight seance. For some reason, when the sun started to creep in through her window, she was wide awake. She made her morning coffee and gave Starlight some stew from the fridge to supplement his dry cat food, and was looking on her phone for a morning show that she had watched a few times before. Usually she wasn't up early enough to see it, but it was easier for her to keep up on the news through televised programs than by reading articles. As she stood next to the coffee pot, waiting for it to finish dripping, she heard crying, a man's voice sobbing, "Oh, no, no, no." She looked at her phone at first, thinking it was a pop-up commercial she'd failed to dismiss, but it wasn't her phone. She hit the mute button on the morning show to silence their animated, chattering voices so she could hear where the sound was coming from. While it seemed much closer, she finally determined that it was coming from outside. She looked out her windows that faced the garden, but still couldn't see what was going on, so she went outside for a peek. Forrest, the garden gnome, was sitting on a big rock, his face in his hands, weeping loudly. Reg stood looking at him, unsure what to do. It was a private moment, and she was sure he wouldn't want to be interrupted or to have to explain his sorrow to her. She should go back in the cottage and mind her own business. But she couldn't get past his heartbroken sobs. She couldn't just leave him there to deal with whatever had made him so unhappy without at least offering a listening ear. What good was a psychic who wouldn't listen? Mr. Blumenthal? He raised his head and looked at her. He started immediately to his feet as if she'd caught him doing something forbidden. Miss Rawlins! His blue eyes were watery and red, but his face was an unreadable mask. If she hadn't caught him crying, she wouldn't have been able to read the sorrow in the lines of his face. She took a couple of steps closer. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to startle you. It's just that you sounded so sad. I wanted to make sure that everything is okay. Are you all right? He rubbed at his nose with the back of his hand and reached into the pocket of his coveralls. He drew out a strange, curvy pipe like Reg had seen on Sherlock Holmes movie covers and started to fiddle with it, filling it and lighting it without looking at her. His hands shook slightly, but otherwise he betrayed no emotion. But in her head, Reg again heard the sobs. She's just a girl. What could she do? His lips hadn't moved, and he continued to focus on his pipe, drawing in a long drag of smoke and then puffing it out in rings. Reg suddenly realized she hadn't heard him with her natural ears, but had been hearing his thoughts. She looked away, embarrassed. It wasn't polite to listen in on other people's private thoughts. She hadn't meant to enter his head and wasn't sure how she had. I'll help you if there's anything I can do, she offered. She looked up at the pale blue sky. There were white clouds toward the horizon, but overhead it was just blue sky, a few birds far above them. A human does not help a gnome, but it is the humans we must deal with. Reg waited. She made an offering gesture with her hands, not sure what else to say to him. He squinted at her, his blue eyes taking on a new expression. You hear my words? Reg nodded. Yes, I'm sorry. I wasn't trying to read your thoughts. I don't know what happened. Maybe I'm extra sensitive after the seance last night, she explained, aware that she was saying too much, providing information he didn't need. Humans cannot hear inside words. No, not usually, but I'm a psychic, so I guess I can. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to intrude. He pulled the pipe away from his mouth, giving a sudden smile. His cheeks were red and his eyes brighter. Talking with humans is usually so hard. She remembered his curtness when they'd been introduced the day before. Maybe he hadn't been rude or abrupt, but just had problems forming words aloud. Do gnomes talk to each other with their inside words? She guessed. He nodded vigorously. That is our way, he agreed. The outside words are much harder. Well, you can talk to me with your inside words. I didn't mean to overhear you, but if there's something I can do to help, I'd be happy to. He puffed on his pipe again and considered. Reg realized that she couldn't hear all of his private thoughts, only the words he wished to share, and was relieved. Maybe she hadn't been as rude as she'd feared. It is my brother, he told her finally, my twin. You have a twin? All gnomen have a twin. Really? I didn't know that. That must be really nice. You'd always have someone to talk to growing up, someone who was always there for you. The loneliness of her childhood had been a far different story. Reg had moved from family to family, never with anyone who could understand her thoughts and feelings, who understood her past and could be empathetic toward her. She longed for a sister she could share her thoughts with. There had been the occasional foster sister she had connected with, like Erin, but it had mostly been a lonely existence. Forrest nodded his head. Gnome twins rely on each other. We are closely bound. That made sense to Reg. She'd always thought that twins must be the closest kind of relationship there was, in contact with each other from the time they were conceived, spending time together in the womb, communing with each other, and becoming familiar with each other's patterns and feelings. And something happened to your twin. What is it? The gnome was still holding his pipe in his right hand, his left clenched into a fist. Reg felt his distress heighten. He has been captured, locked in a cage. Oh dear. Reg looked around, hoping that Sarah might be walking by. She didn't understand a lot of things about the magical world, and if some evil witch or other creature had kidnapped Forrest's brother, Reg was going to need help from someone with much deeper knowledge and experience. Captured by who? What happened? Black coats took him away. They said he could not protect his patch any longer, that he was doing wrong and had to be punished. Forrest's hand unclenched and reclenched. He tried to keep a hold on himself, but could not restrain another desperate sob. And who are these black coats? Are they witches? Something else? Where did they take him? To the cage! The cage, he wailed. How can they lock up a free creature? Reg couldn't help walking closer to the gnome and hesitated, not knowing if she could touch him or if that would be considered inappropriate or an assault. He looked up at her, his eyes swimming with tears. What did they say he did wrong? Reg prompted. They want to destroy his patch. They want to kill the plants. Humans always want to destroy everything. He did nothing but protect his own living. Reg caught on the thoughts she could understand. It was humans who took him? What kind of humans? The black coats, he repeated. They took him away and put him in a cage. Understanding was dawning on Reg. Do you mean police? Black shirts and pants with badges and shields on them? Reg gestured to her own chest and shoulder. Forrest nodded miserably. He was arrested? What did they say they were arresting him for? For protecting his plants. What kind of plants? Reg asked suspiciously. Did he have special plants, like marijuana? No, Forrest's brow wrinkled. No ditchweed. Not plants humans care about. They want to kill them. Why? Building roads, houses, replacing everything with stone. Why do humans like stone so much? It must be part dwarf. Development, Reg finally understood. Where is his property? Are they going to pay him for it? Gold? Forrest shook his head grumpily. You cannot kill plants for gold. Gnomen need living things, not metal and rocks. I'm sorry, Reg shook her head. Humans can be big bullies. Forrest tugged on her sleeve, looking up at her pleadingly. You will talk to the black coats, he begged. You will get him out of the cage. Reg sighed. All right, so that's chapter 3 of the Telepathy of Gardens. And if you'd like to purchase it, today is launch day. It's live on Amazon and in the Kindle store. You can also head over to my blog. I'll put a link in the comment section. In my blog, I also have some other new releases. So if there's if you'd like to pick up a few more books as well, then you can find a good selection of them in my blog. And have a great day. Hope you have a good Friday and a good weekend. I will talk to you next week.